Hello, everybody. This is Andre. I'm the CEO of Admiral Media, and I say welcome to Let's Talk Ads. Some of you may have recognized we've rebranded from Let's Talk Apps to Let's Talk Ads. The reason is that we want to invite speakers and guests to the podcast who can not only talk about apps, but general digital marketing or growth topics. And this, of course, would exclude too many amazing people who not only work on app advertising or app products, but also on web funnels and any other things like e-commerce and so on. And I'm sure we could also learn from these folks. Today, we are talking about developing a creative strategy and effective channel mix. For that, I've invited Julian Werner from Bytro Games, a huge gaming studio based in Hamburg. So say hi and welcome to Julian. Welcome on stage. Julian, how are you?
Hi, Andre. I'm fine, thanks. But I need to make one correction. It's Bytro Labs, not games.
So, was that a rebranding as well, or
maybe? Let's start all over just.
Okay, well, let's talk about branding a little later.
We'll do that.
Julian, I'm happy to have you here on stage. I hope we can have a nice conversation. Maybe also to the audience, if you guys have questions or anything, just put them in the chat. Maybe say hi to us, where you're from and what you guys are working on. It's maybe also interesting for the other folks that are listening and watching. In general, the show will be available later on to listen and watch on the different channels. So don't worry if you have to skip or jump out for something else. It will be there for you. Julian, maybe you can give a very short introduction about yourself, what you really do. What is Bytro Labs?
Yeah, sure enough. So Bytro is a developer and publisher of online grand strategy games. You can consider us the home of grand strategy games because we serve this sector of the strategy gaming market more or less as a dominant force on the market. I'm with the company now for 8 years, started out on the marketing side and now leading the company and also assisting on the managing director part. And before that, I was working for another Hamburg-based company, InnoGames, for 5.5 years, actually.
Big names, big names. How did you end up in gaming? What did you do before?
Well, I've been at the ticketing side before. I'm kind of a musician to some extent for some period of my life, and I decided it would be fun to work in the music industry. I then had to learn that the music industry is not a fun place, actually, and ticketing is not such a fun activity. And so I moved over from the SEO and editorial part that I did there into the parts that I also learned into marketing and into games.
Okay, interesting. That's quite a development from the music industry to gaming. Still somehow entertainment related, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into it. We want to talk about creatives and channel mix. How is that? But maybe before we jump into that, you as a managing director, you have quite a global perspective on the gaming industry in particular. How do you see the current development of the industry? We as an agency, we work with many, many different categories of products, and lots of them are startups, and we see quite a downtrend with most of them. VC money is pulled out of the market. There's less and less marketing budgets available, or less risk appetite for certain products that need advertising. How is it in gaming, and how is it for Bytro in particular?
Yeah, from my point of view, probably you need to differentiate the market. The market as a whole likely is somewhat entering a trajectory of pre-pandemic times again, likely. But then again, from my point of view, who's driving that? It's a very few selected companies that do that some of them just have entered this stage and already eat up quite a market share. And then you have like incumbents that really also are having a great time. And for the vast minority, it's just eating the remnants of what's left over. Especially if you hear that new game or playtime on new games is like 8% in a market that is just getting more and more titles every year. it's quite clear that this is not a sustainable trend, if you like. So what for me personally is very clear is that discovery to some extent for new titles is broken. Probably on some parts also distribution alongside, especially if we talk about iOS, pretty clear. All of that makes it pretty clear that for marketing teams these days, it's a great time to shine, right? It's an environment where you really can make a difference, but the demands are also higher, the stakes are higher. You just need to be very integrated in product, in art, and analytics to really succeed. And that's what we at Bytro try to achieve. If you look at the way that we've been doing in last years with serving this sector in the strategy gaming market, that's still relatively unexplored to a huge extent, and we still have a lot of leeway there. So we were growing quite a bit over the last couple of years, but needless to say, we're also subject to all of these constraints that I was talking about.
Interesting that you mentioned that. I'm just out of a presentation here in the TikTok office in Berlin, where someone was presenting something and repeated the fact that you need so many events per campaign per day to actually meet thresholds, to train algorithms to get any postbacks and so on. Would you say marketing any kind of product, also games, became a pay-to-play thing? Or do you still think small studios have a chance to succeed?
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially if we talk about the role of creative, we always look at increasing CPIs and whatnot, right? But you also have to account that these days you have a hidden CPI development, as I like to call it, insofar that you have to invest more and more into creative budgets as well, right? And if you want to do the math correctly and you take all the costs into account, your CPI is not 10% higher, but it's likely 15% higher also. Just because the invest that you need to take into creative efforts these days, not to speak of all the upfront costs that you have with development and the likes, are also very substantial. So definitely I see the big get bigger trend, or like this notion of the winner takes all market really kick in. And yeah.
Talking about creatives, I mean, you're since what, 8 years in Bytro already. Can you tell me more about your creative strategies for the games like Forge of Empires, Conflict of Nations, Supremacy 1940? I mean, you have really huge titles that are long in the market as well. How many creatives do you push out every month, and what is needed for that?
Yeah. So for us, really, we're coming from a perspective where we're very strong on the UGC side ever since late 2021, where we really scaled up on TikTok a lot. TikTok was still quite small, and it was more or less a blue ocean. And we back then found that low file style creatives that are very close to original TikTok content work really well. And for that matter, UGC is kind of our DNA. But diversification, of course, on the creative side is key. You can't really enter a video network inventory without also having shares on the playable side, on good, strong video content in general. So while UGC is still a focus topic, we're also diversifying on that end. What we do is we try to, with help of our partners and most notably also the TikTok Creative Challenge, come up indeed with a great variety of UGC style creatives. We have like an output of 500 creatives on our games, Conflict of Nations, Supremacy 1914, and Call of War. These 500 creatives we try to then also make available to other platforms, creating knowledge and basically going as broad as possible with those. We also have, of course, still traditional image ads, but they make up a minority these days. I think one important aspect here to note is also that Bytro is part of Stillfront Group, and as such, we have the potential to also collaborate inside the group on the creative part. So we have a couple of projects that we are also having focused on ASO, for example, improving our game here. So we're very, despite being a generally smaller company, we're very widespread in terms of creative output and ideation.
Mm-hmm. when we talk about the volume of creatives for one title, for example, are we talking about like 20 ads or concepts a month, or is it in the thousands? Just rough range.
Yeah, it's in the hundreds, so 100 to 200 creatives per title per month is realistic.
Wow. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
How many people do you have then in the team?
We do have 3 dedicated artists, but those 3 artists have, of course, multiple thousand brains these days, right? They are used to and work a lot on the AI side. We're working with a handful of tools there and also exploring the market for new ones. We also still have a very hands-on approach when it comes to UA managers getting creative. So every once in a while, you also see creatives entering the market that don't come from dedicated marketing artists, but from UA managers actually. And those tend to work also quite competitively. And of course, also agencies, working with agencies is just key these days. And all of that adds up to what I just stated, this additional invest that you just need to take these days to stay afloat.
We hear many marketers saying, and maybe myself, creatives is everything. It essentially defines very often if a campaign makes it or breaks, right? How do you define a successful creative strategy in today's landscape?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about diversification, right? Diversification definitely being a part. You also need to talk about efficiency these days, of course. Speaking from a P&L perspective, if you do like 5 to 10% of your media budget on creative alone, then you need to be efficient. You can't afford to come up with only a handful of creatives that need to do the job, but preserve yourself basically as many shots on goal as you can. I think key still today, and here we're back with what I just explained, is being fast. That's also why UA managers sometimes get a little bit anxious to put their concepts to the market. It's just like you need to have fast feedback loops. You need to have quick turnover times. If you see something sticks, then just go horizontal, scale it as much as possible, especially with our kinds of games that play like tabletop games, where you're steering a country basically through war over various weeks and months. You can really go very broad in terms of applying to very many different geographics and their respective country setups, if you like. So this is a key component for us, is having very many different variations from one well-working creative. And of course, speaking about quantity, you will need to make also compromises, especially if you want to have a decent amount of throughput. And I think you really need to stick to the 80-20 rule, and you need to accept that you shouldn't over-polish single ads, especially if you look at TikTok. This is usually not getting rewarded the right way. So just stick to your guns and be creative, as much as creative as you can be.
Nice metaphor for stick to the guns for for the type of games you produce. You mentioned UA managers produce creatives, you hire agencies here and there. You have probably also your in-house team. How do you build the team? Like what are you looking at in the CVs when you hire people, or how do you challenge this creative side?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think in times of change, in times of disruption, it's super important that you're looking for curiosity minds that are just interested in adapting new trends, potentially even defining new trends, right? Then definitely a must-have is, like, next to knowing your craft, is you need to be able to really get to know what sticks on the market. If you don't consider what works on the market, you're just running into this efficiency bottleneck that I was just talking about. Super important to have an eye on that. We have even hired a dedicated content creator role, and she's coming from the production side herself, has a very good overview and a creative mind. So that definitely helps to have someone on the team with basically first-hand knowledge. And yeah, then of course it's the traditional skills, creativity, and also in a remote setup, you need to have someone who can communicate, right? Who's able to communicate needs and proactivity from themselves.
Are you fully remote, or you work from home now? No.
I do currently work from home. We have a hybrid local work model, but half of our employees are still remote, 100% more or less.
Okay. I just got pinged. We have audience questions, but I suggest that we take them at the end and continue for now. Otherwise, I completely lose track here.
Okay.
Stay with us, guys. We will get there. We work with a lot of different brands and products, and we also have a design team in the agency. And we have to, let's say, look at very different USPs and everything. And very often it's very hard to define like what are the key elements to make an ad a winning ad. How is that for you? How do you differentiate a high performing creative from an average one?
Yeah, I mean, aside from looking at the pure metrics, right? I think it's important to first take a look at really like who are you advertising towards, who's your core audience, and this understanding, developing this understanding, and also making it publicly available for everyone in the company is the very beginning of the creative journey here. For example, we usually have our target audience of male 35, 40 plus, so definitely a bit more mature than the average employee that we have. So very important point. And then I think it's getting kind of classic, right? You need to have a look at what are your hooks. So the first kind of 2 seconds that just play such a huge role. We found that in our case, for example, if you call out the state's name in the first 2 seconds, like the click rate basically is higher. And these kind of hooks, also like working on iterating on them, just very important in this short-lived attention span times that we are in. Then I think storyline is key. Most of our high performer ads have a great storyline, follow a storyline that is not only educated, but also entertaining in a way. And then very traditionally, a good take-home message, what we used to call a call to action back in the days, something that just makes sure that you will get the action that you desire. And the magic actually comes in being able to efficiently iterate on these elements and match them and mix them as much as possible to preserve you that many shots on goal that you need.
How do you measure effectiveness of your creative strategy in production? Do you use one central KPI, or do you look at 7 different numbers? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, in earlier days, probably we were more ROI focused. That has changed once we entered really TikTok, where a look at how well does a creative scale, how much new users does it pull in at a given ROI is more consideration. So more really impressions and clicks and the scale of those playing a role, right? We don't like sacrifice ROI, but having a super well working creative from an ROI perspective that is not scaling doesn't help you a lot these days, right? So it's really the number one aspect of can you make a creative scale? Do you need to potentially give the hook another iteration? What's the thing why on a specific platform it doesn't take off? Do you need to talk to your account manager on what's going on and challenge them? So it's a wild mixture. Not everything of that is really quantifiable, but for most parts, it's about those.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Let's maybe quickly jump into an audience question here before we jump onto the next topic. Nalin is asking, casual ads versus puzzle ads. Is there any different strategy to go forward with? For example, match 3 games, hard to crack with original gameplay ideas.
Not sure I can elaborate on the casual ads versus puzzle ads topic. Okay. Really, is that like fake gameplay? Is it addressing fake gameplay?
Yeah,
because I mean, if we talk about mini games, fake gameplay, these kind of things. It's an area that we are only starting to explore, actually. We, due to our unique gameplay, were stuck with what you see is what you get for a very long time. And we now have seen first small success cases that lead us more into this direction. I'm not sure if that's the question, if that's what the question relates to.
Yes, maybe not 100% clear. Yes, fake gameplays and hybrid styles and against scalable.
Yeah. So I think you need to look at that one holistically, right? You need to have the onboarding ready. Otherwise, especially if your game is more serving a niche, you can easily, I think, ruin your success metrics here. Yeah,
I think also in this category, what I've seen lately is certainly a high investment on influencer ads or UGC ads, which brings me to the next question from Deva. May I know the structure to create a UGC ad?
Well, when you talk about structure, it's a lot about, or like when we talk about UGC ads, moreover, it's a lot about trying to participate in the TikTok Creative Challenge and really incentivize a good throughput of UGC content that is produced by original content creators. Basically, you give them a briefing, you give them the requirements, and then they will hit the ground running and try to come up with ads on that end. What you need to make sure is that you invest into testing the concepts as well. And this is how it all goes full circle and also starts to make sense for TikTok here on that end.
Maybe I can say one more sentence to it. So I was basically, I'm sitting here literally in the TikTok office in Berlin and was having a presentation, and the structure of an organic UGC was actually part of my presentation. So amazing timing to ask this question. What I found is basically the most successful guys are probably structuring it in a way that they have a hook followed by the body, then they again repeat the hook or have a second hook that is a bit different. Then it's again followed by a more generic body type of content, and then the conclusion. Happy to elaborate more, maybe in another, in one of the next Let's Talk ads. But yeah, that's basically a working structure apparently. So let's maybe jump into the second topic. Let me just find my notes here again. Matching marketing channels and creatives. Now, when you work with such big titles you're involved in, can you share maybe one big success you saw recently in terms of creatives?
Yes, sure enough. So we have actually taken one of our best performer creatives from back in the days. That is a very lo-fi creative. I'm not sure, maybe we can also have a quick look at it, and took it and basically brought it up to speed with a little bit of a fake gameplay approach. And
okay, one second, then let's maybe show to the audience a few seconds of this ad.
Difficult countries you can play in Supremacy 1914. When you start a new match in Supremacy 1914, the whole world is against you. So be careful when choosing your country. Choosing Chile as a starting point is especially difficult. Chile is a very long country which can be attacked from all sides and only one province wide. This means you will have only one way to reconquer your provinces. Cuba also makes it difficult because Cuba lies directly next to the US and you are completely cut off from the mainland. You might enjoy some peace in the beginning, but when you want to start conquering people, it will get very difficult. If you want to have it incredibly difficult, choose any European country. No matter which of your neighbors you attack, everyone else will join the fight against you. You simply have a border with everyone. It's impossible to wage war here. If you want to try your skills at Supremacy 1914, get the game with the link below the video.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. What's very interesting here is that the original one was a true lo-fi content creator like production, where we really were basically screen capturing what was happening on the PC and just putting it live, and it worked like hell. It's one of these creatives where you want to get rid of them, but they still work today, and networks will still scale them. Typical luxury problem here. And we thought like it would make sense to give this one a try with a bit more up-to-date standards. It works really well, and is also an outcome of the collaboration inside Still Frontier.
Okay, so you're saying past success, let's say, is reproducible in some way.
Yeah, revisit what has worked in the past, definitely. I think it's crucial that you, in basically all areas of business, revisit statements from 2 to 3 years back. The market has changed so much that what wasn't working or what was working 2 to 3 years ago is not necessarily what's working today, or vice versa. So it's very important to revisit those. And when we talk about ad networks, it's quite classic for us. So we're trying a lot on the video network side currently with the bigger players there. To name a few, like AppLovin, and also cost per engagement networks. And all of them come with totally different creative demands. Again, here, the magic is that you identify those demands. You know the audience that you're up against. And basically also the ad formats and adjust those accordingly, right? Especially when it comes to stuff like end card optimization, etc. And cranking out this variety of content that is just needed these days.
Do you have special challenges in aligning creatives with scaling marketing channels? Is there something that is really outstanding and remarkable in terms of either it always fails and is really problematic, or something where you say, hey, this is the thing and it always works?
Yeah, that's a good one. There are parts that are really craft related, where you just need to know what you're doing. Of course, like you need to know the creative formats and the match to respective placements and what works. But there are also a couple of learnings that we just made over the years, is like where TikTok creative and the UGC style creative from TikTok pretty much works more or less everywhere else as well, where the same is not true vice versa. So you can't just take your average Facebook creative and hope that it works on TikTok. That's not how it's going to work. But you can create synergies that way and really double down on efficiency by having a clear way how you produce and how you address certain placements. Yeah, that's basically how I would phrase it. I think it's also important when we talk about aligning creatives with the right marketing channels that you can challenge your account manager and you can get insights on what works for them, what are the recommendations, just so as you explained, asking TikTok, like what's the ideal setup for a great TikTok ad. That's something that your account manager should be able to tell you, because it's in their vital interest to have this knowledge transfer.
You mentioned when we talked about the fake gameplay, I was just having in my head now, when we talk about big titles like yours, or even with completely new games, in the past years, we as marketers made a lot of fun about this keyword branding. How is that for you? Is it an important thing to pay attention on? Should I build a brand from the very beginning? Once it's an established title, is CI and guidelines, is that an important thing?
Yeah, that's a great topic to touch base on. So I think I'm having a strong opinion when it comes to brands in this generic market. I think true brands, there are very only a few select. These days we even see that Supercell struggles with their brand and leveraging it for new title launches, right? So it's really up for debate. I think where brand really plays a role is where you have a dedicated community. You might have games with a long LTV curve, and here building up a community and creating an awareness inside this community, also with respect to direct-to-consumer monetization opportunities, is where the concept of a brand really kicks. I don't believe that much that a brand really kicks on this generic market where you have more and more participants competing for eyeballs. So this is something where I'm a little bit more skeptical still, I'd say. For that matter, on the UA side, we don't bother too much with brand constraints, but we really go with velocity and trying to see what sticks more than running every ad through our legal department and see if they are good with it.
Okay. So do you then say you don't do any, let's say, brand campaigns or something like that? It's all only UA focus, a strong ROI thing, or how do you balance performance?
We have some exceptions. So we had some CTV tests running lately where we were looking also at overspill effects, if you like, and if you want to consider those as part of the brand effect. But we're really not running brand campaigns at scale and just hoping that someone someday will come back to us. It's all direct response, really. What we do look at the blended ROI of organics and marketing users, and we're looking at all the good stuff that you want to have: K-factor, A&R optimization, ASO, CPP, and try to be in shape on that end. But else we try to go with a little bit of a heuristic approach here, and we basically stay lean on that end.
Okay. And let's maybe jump into the last topic. Let's discuss a little bit about goals and goal-driven collaboration. I mean, in marketing teams, there's a lot of hats involved to get campaigns live and to optimize them, right? It's from the hands-on campaign manager to the creative person to someone who's overseeing maybe brand, someone who's building the dashboards and understands attribution, and so on and so on. How do you ensure that both creative and performance marketing teams are aligned with your goals as a company, which is usually revenue growth?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think traditionally you're looking at a challenge to basically be analytical with creatives or be creative with more analytical guys. I think this is where also a deep integration of the teams kicks in together with a good tool. I think these days you just need to have some sort of creative management tool. If I may, a little bit advertising here. So we use the AppsFlyer Creative Suite a lot these days, which comes integrated with our MMP. And that helps to close the feedback loop, just what I was talking about. And really have small density feedback loops between UA managers and creatives. And also when it comes to benchmarking creatives amongst each other and sparking dialogues, I think just having a good creative tool these days is a must-have.
Does that, let's say, performance marketers will all look at huge tables and look at very different KPIs. Do you have one centralized dashboard or one centralized KPI, which also includes the production team in some way? Do you incentivize the production team even?
The production team itself is not really incentivized, but I will say we're having like a strong growth DNA, and everyone from production up to UA creative is really happy to see when we found a new best performer creatives, because it gets visibly so easily and scales so fast these days. So this growth DNA is something that is of utmost importance in this context.
Okay. Do you celebrate that in some way? Internally, like, hey, we found something that really scales?
Yeah, if not in our all hands, then on Slack or whatnot. So this gets really like shared a lot. And
okay,
yeah.
So recognition still plays a role in big companies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
Definitely.
What are from your perspective, what are the best practices for navigating the collaboration between UA and creative teams?
Yeah, as I said, very small feedback loops, short feedback loops between what comes out of production, how does it work, can we iterate on it, being very agile and lean. As well, don't hinder your UA managers from getting creative. This was basically also key when we scaled very early on the concept, like the the lo-fi productions, the first UGC pieces, they also came from the UA managers because they were just seeing what was sticking on the market and just pulling out their phone and doing their thing. And so this can be very helpful. But of course, you need to have the dialogue between the teams to really scale those success cases. And then, of course, I think sparking or fostering a curiosity culture where you really want to find out what AI can do to you on the creative part is super critical and a must-have these days.
How do you balance data-driven decisions with creative intuition in performance marketing? Like what I very often find is that the performance marketers or the creative people just don't have time to actually get really creative. They are just mass producing and are overloaded with work. How do you balance all this? Like that they still can be creative.
Yeah, we try to bucket this a little bit, right? So there's this hunt for the next best performer, of course, that is following very hypothesis-based but creative roadmap. And then you have iterations on best performing concepts that need to be scaled. That's what you refer to here when it comes about cranking new ads like in a very efficient and almost machine-like way, actually machine-like way these days. And then a certain small fraction of the time is also important to really reserve for creative moonshots that are a little bit out of the ordinary, where you need to reserve yourself the time and also the creativity, basically, to really iterate on those. And we found that this mixture of bucketing tickets and work into those is really helpful, also when it comes to prioritization and being transparent on demands that the teams have.
Interesting. Elena is asking how you integrate AI solutions in your productions. Do you have a certain framework, processes or something to find and identify working tools? And then how do you incorporate that into your standard processes?
Not really a framework, I'd say. It's just everyone's encouraged to test new tools when they're on the market very leanly. I mean, signing up for those tools is even easier as using them in most parts. And then we have a selected few tools that we use a lot. Of course, Midjourney, we use Runway a lot, Revoicer. We have a couple of new tools in the testing that we try to leverage. Arcades.ai is one. And we try to really leverage the power of AI in a day-to-day basis. Integration-wise, I think AI is specifically helpful when it comes to getting this initial concept and trying to see what's just because it's super efficient. It's just very cheap, and it can inform the direction that a creative can take very easily.
Do you have fully AI created ads out there already, like from ideation to production to voice to sound to everything, or?
On the static side, yes. On the video side, no.
Okay, would be interesting to learn how those perform. We are testing this quite a bit with dating apps. We have quite some success on that end, where it's like completely AI created from the idea to the final product. And this works really well, actually. So I'm curious how gamers deal with that.
What tools do you use there?
Oh God, it's a huge combination, and I feel like I'm signing up for I'm signing subscriptions every month for another tool. So I actually lost track, to be honest. But I'm happy to make another Let's Talk Ads about that. Maybe in combination with UGC production, what we mentioned before. I hope Alara was able to take some notes in the background. So do we have topics for next time, and then we can maybe invite someone from the creative production side for a talk.
Sounds awesome.
Are there any more questions from the audience? Then this is your last chance as we are coming to an end. Last questions, Julian, best performing channels these days in gaming?
All of them.
All of them. Everything is best before you.
Everything is going. Everything is super. No, I mean, the most important channels we talked about, them, they are still there. I think probably the cost per engagement networks are pretty much on the rise these days. They are scaling a lot. They are on every conference. I think it's worthwhile to look at those. But yeah,
I haven't seen
every game is different there. So I think the mix is also very different.
Maybe another question, playable ads. I haven't seen any lately in my feeds, whatever things I'm using. I haven't seen playable ads. How's that?
Yeah, so playable ads are also for us like a tricky beast, if you like. We have been testing some of those quite nicely on the IPM side, but then also paid CPMs that outweigh this advantage easily, and so it wasn't really profitable scaling those. But we're close to it still, and we're producing new concepts these days, and try to venture into those. I don't think the hype, if you like, is over on that end. I think it's worthwhile to keep investing.
I found production was always so complicated. I don't know.
Yeah.
Production and this distribution as well. Finally uploading it into some random channels like Google or whatsoever. Like, pain in the ass.
It can be a nightmare. True.
Nassim, does real life UGC? Probably he means, are real life UGC as effective as the past year, especially with real human?
So it might be these days more effective really to go with unreal human, if you like, from a cost perspective. But they do still work really well when it comes to pure performance aspects. But if you talk about production cost, I think it's worthwhile to venture really into what AI can do for you.
Okay. Julian, was very insightful. Thank you very much. I'm happy that you had the time to jump into this. I guess you have a lot of other things on your plate. To the audience, thanks for joining. I hope you learned something. If not, or if yes, doesn't matter. Please share your feedback. We can only learn from that. And hope to see you very soon again. Recording will be available very soon. Take care, guys. To the moon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.